One of the undisputed stars of the Düsseldorf Boat Show back in January was the Sargo 45. Now that is the largest boat that Sargo has ever built, and it feels in fact in many ways like the boat that existing owners of Sargo's 36 have been waiting for a very long time. So small wonder it received such a positive reception in Düsseldorf, so positive in fact that all 20 of the opening build slot boats have already been allocated. Now the flybridge is not with us yet. That is a matter for future consideration according to the guys here. They need to sell a few boats before they can recoup their development costs and move on to the fly variant. But here is the Sargo 45. This is boat number 5 now. The one we saw in Düsseldorf was called boat number 1. And while we couldn't take it out for a sea trial then, we absolutely can today. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, up at the helm, I've said this before about Sargo boats and generally about offshore pilothouse boats from this part of the world. Customers tend to do long distances on them, so they need them to be properly adjustable and properly comfortable, and it's exactly that. I mean, apart from anything, this seat is beautiful, just like the co-pilot seats on the port side. Proper leather, properly stitched, it's beautiful detailing, really high quality. And of course, despite the fact that we've got the galley on the starboard side, there's good 4.5 movement for this chair, so you can fit a really big guy in there or a relatively compact person, and because you've also got adjustability at the wheel, plus this rather lovely section here that enables the entire forward section of the dash to move up and down. You can really tailor this exactly to your body shape in all regards. I've not actually done that by moving that up and down, so I shall just tailor it to mine slightly. I'm not a huge guy, there we are, we'll move that in. And we also have the foot brace down below. Great all-round visibility. And here we've got a pair of 22-inch plotters, absolutely enormous. They take advantage of every spare inch of that dash space there. But what we really want to do, having seen this in Düsseldorf and not had the chance to try it out, is get it underway and have a play. So we've got single lever engaged. We'll check we've got a bit of clear water and we'll get her up to speed. Now, as I say, we have a pair of IPS 650s here, 480 horsepower each, and there's it's a gorgeous surge. We're passing 20 knots already. It's quite interesting here. Even though we've got IPS drives, we also have a set of interceptors, which means that if you need to, you can kind of bury that nose, you can force that nose down into an aggressive head seat, plough through it with that fine entry, and of course that bow flare that Sargo's famous for kicks the water sideways, kicks the spray outboard, so it's a nice dry, soft ride. And of course if you have no need to be pinning that nose, then you could just allow the bow to elevate and go in pursuit of greater efficiency instead. And that in itself is quite impressive. Right up to around about 29 knots, we're seeing about 4.5 litres per nautical mile. Now even with the standard tanks, which are twin 800 tanks, so 1600 litres, that'll give you a usable range of around about 300 nautical miles. This particular boat, the owner spec'd the fuel tank up, he's gone to 2000 litres, so that takes the range to 360 nautical miles. And as I say, that's important to the customers of Sargo, of boats like these. They want to go long distance, so it's certainly not uncommon for people to request extra fuel capacity. Now what we're going to do, because this is quite a neat trick too, I say we got 4.5 litres per nautical mile right up to 29 knots. But if we come down, all the way down, past 20 knots, past speeds that would have the average powerboat falling off the plane and ascending its own hump, pointing its bow skywards. Now we'll drop that nose as we do so, come past 20 knots. It's quite a neat trick here. You can get yourself all the way down to 15 knots, slightly lower than that, 14 knots. And you can still keep that attitude, that planing attitude, nice and flat, so it remains very efficient. At 14, 15 knots, we're still seeing less than 4.5 litres per nautical mile. And the real world applications of that are fantastic. If you've got nervous passengers on board in a relatively rough sea state, then you could just cruise along nice and gently without pointing your nose skywards, without getting massive impacts, because the running attitude of your boat is exactly right. It's very impressive indeed. Now we'll get her back up to speed and we'll lift that nose again. Now we've got ventilation going on here. We've got both of these side doors just slid slightly open so we don't get too sweaty. But this is a really refined kind of boat. I mean, we've got double glazing all round, and they've really worked hard on the insulation of those engines as well. So at a cruising speed of around about 25, 26, 27 knots, you're only really seeing 70 decibels, which is so relaxing and easy on a long passage. At the top end, we're seeing around about 35.7 knots. And that's perfectly adequate for a boat like this. You really don't need any more than that, because it's not about outright pace, it's about where you can go and what you can do with it and how comfortable you are while you're actually carrying out that job. And as the flagship of the Sargo range, this delivers exactly what you want in that regard. Now, as we pointed out in Dusseldorf, this boat is full of detail. Proper, serious, carefully considered, painstaking detail, the sort of detail that you can only achieve by having spent countless hours on the water, and that's what Sargos are all about. So we start here. We've got the stern anchor on the port side. This is, after all, a Nordic boat, and in the centre of the deck we've got a nice big locker, easily big enough to swallow up your big bulky roving fenders. Above that we've got a dedicated fender cage, and on the starboard side, tucked neatly out of harm's way, we've got the shore power there, plus the mixer tap and the connecting point for your transom shower. Stepping into the cockpit itself, it's a really good size and it's relatively simplistic in terms of its layout. Now, some of the criticisms that people level at this type of boat, at offshore pilot house cruisers like this, is that they don't provide enough in the way of recreational versatility forward or aft. But this is very decent. We've got a big L-shaped settee there with a good sized table. In this forward locker built into the aft end of the pilot house, we also have plenty of space, as you'll see, for some nice branded director's chairs there. So you can litter this deck with freestanding furniture, sit the entire ship's complement back here for dinner. And the galley, of course, on the starboard side of the pilot house is pretty well placed to serve you back there. Now, elsewhere in this cockpit we have, of course, the engine hatch down there. Now that opens from the port side, so it hinges in that direction, giving you a much bigger aperture to get yourself down in there and do your servicing. And if we open this hatch forward, this manual hatch, we'll get access down into that engine bay, and you'll see we have, on this particular model, a pair of Volvo Penta's D6 IPS 650s. Now apparently with these IPSs it will achieve a knot more than with sterndrives, but in this part of the world where a lot of people go quite shallow water cruising, nosing into rocks and beaches, sterndrives are also quite popular. Over on the starboard side, it looks like a little wet bar. It's not. We've got a good bit of storage in there. We've got the shower fitting there for the attachment point we saw earlier. And over here, if I loosen that little catch, we've got a huge, deep fridge area. In this case, full of lovely Finnish beer, Karhu. Very good, I can tell you. Let's close those back up and head forward again. As I say, the details everywhere here are very impressive. There's another catch. We'll lift this up. And this hides your port and starboard diesel fillers. It's good to see them both on the same side, so it saves draping hoses all over your boat. You just get the job done in one single go. Now these side decks are enormous. There's no two ways about that. If you look down at my feet, I mean, there's loads of space, and they're deep too. Yeah, the gunnel's around about mid-thigh, and we've got good chunky rails on top of that. These are the black rails that you get with the Explorer package, As you can see, we also get this kind of warship granite grey colour as well. Makes the boat look super cool. It's well worth investing in it. It kind of makes you feel a lot more youthful than the standard package sometimes does. Here's your water filler, and we have a side gate here directly opposite the skipper's side door, where we also have, of course, joystick control, so it's a perfect place to helm the boat very easily. Quite a simple job, single-handed. If we move forward again, we've got a good size of lounger on that coach house roof, with little angled cushions for your head, plus good hatches to get your gear down below if necessary. And what I really like up here, as I say, is the fact that although people tend to level criticisms at offshore pilot house cruisers because they don't provide the recreational versatility of various other boats, well, we have that here. We've got a nice forward-facing bench seat for 2 or 3 people, an additional seat on either side of this locker. You can place your bum there as well, so you can seat 5 or 6 people here. And down inside this locker, we have the leg and the tabletop itself that marries up to that. So everything is exactly where you would want it. And on the forepeak itself, of course, another step-through bow, we've got the anchor offset to port to enable that. And we've got this little device that swings over and down to give you easy access from the bow. I say that, I did see earlier someone trying to get into this boat from the bow when it was moored bow 2 on the pontoon, and they had to rig some ropes from the cleats in order to create a kind of a climbing frame for themselves because it didn't quite come down low enough, so maybe an extension to that would be a useful feature. Now let's make our way back down this port side. Another boarding point with a little step here down below. Back round we go into the cockpit, because I'd like to start at the aft end of this saloon. Step inside and you're greeted immediately by this enormous dinette. Really good size, and what I particularly like, and you get this on most Sargo models, is that you see they're relatively elevated, so they don't want you to feel like you're missing out when you're sitting back here at the afternette. And the views certainly are excellent, even when those co-pilot seats are taken. Now, if you're relaxing back here with a drink or a plate of food, it's good to see that we have a dishwasher, a huge one, built into that unit there. The starboard galley is pretty impressive too. There's generous work surface, and even where you see the sink down there and the 3-ring gas hob top there, they preserve the height of this work surface to keep it nice and comfortable for you. We also have an oven down under there and plenty of individual bits of storage, plus more bespoke elements of storage in here between the 2 sets of seats. What I also like here are the blinds. These look very cool, kind of granite coloured blinds to go with the whole colourways, and those black bars. That's part of the Explorer package, and it was very cool, very modern. I also like the fact that there are armrests everywhere you look. You know, I've talked before about how people naturally gravitate towards the corners on a boat, and with armrests aplenty, there's loads of those here. Loads of them forward here as well, on these rather lovely 3 co-pilot seats. Now let's make our way over here to the port side, where we'll find access to that mid-cabin, that ensuite cabin. Now the access point, as I say, is over here on the port side. On previous models, smaller models of Sargo and other brands, they would tend to give you access to the mid-cabin through the seats in the afternette, but of course this dinette can be converted into a double. So it makes perfect sense to shift the access over here so that we can have 2 sleeping aft, another 2 on the dinette, and as we'll see in a second when we move further forward, there's another couple of cabins down there, so you've got potential to sleep 8 people on here with really decent privacy. Now down we go. The first thing we're greeted with is this door leading aft into a really very generous heads compartment. It's a wet room, so we've got a shower attachment just here. Drains of course in the floor, but the headroom, as you can see, is really decent, and there's plenty of natural light plus an opening porthole for the steam. The fit out is as modest and pared back as you would expect, clean and Nordic and modern, and it's certainly no worse for that. If we swing round to the starboard side and step down a level, you'll see the deck level in there is about 6-7 inches lower. That generates excellent headroom again at the entry point before this part kicks in, which is for the companionway in that pilot house. And that of course lowers the head height above the head end of the beds, but that's not problematic. You can kind of lounge in there somewhere between a sit and a lie to read your book. And as you do so, there's fantastic views out there of the sea, of the horizon, of the sky, unimpeded. Now these beds can slide together to create a really big double, but as they are here, you'll see that the aft bed is much longer than the forward one. And why not? If you're 7 feet long, you could still sleep in that quite comfortably. And we've also got good storage underneath here. If I lift this bed, you'll see that's full of bedding at the moment. The aft one, even more space. If I lift this up, you'll see there's plenty of room there for your baggage. No problem at all. Now let's make our way out of here through this sliding door. That's a great way to make the best use of space. And here's another example of that. Beneath this section of deck here, we have a washing machine hidden out of sight until you need it. So that's ideal if you're planning on a longer cruise. Now down these steps to port of the helm, we find ourselves in another brightly lit atrium. We've got ventilation up there through that roof hatch and plenty of light flooding down from that port side of that helm console. We've got some useful furniture in here too, not least this section here. If I open that up, you'll see there's plenty of hanging storage there, which is always very welcome if you plan to cruise long term. And we have 3 doors. The forward one to the owner's cabin, the middle one to the heads compartment, and the aft one to a double cabin beneath that helm station. So let's pop straight into there and have a little look. Again, you'll see the deck drops away a good 7 inches, which generates even better headroom here. We must have, I reckon, at least 7 feet, more than that I would have thought. So plenty of room to change. And again, decent natural light and some ventilation. More storage down here to the side of the bed. And the bed itself is well proportioned. Nice and regular. And this time you can sit up in bed, of course. There are reading lights at the head end. Ambient glow from those inset LEDs. You get everything you need and nothing you don't. So it's very practical indeed. As you would expect of Sargo. Let's make our way forward a touch and take a look into that heads compartment, which of course you can use as a day heads, no problem at all. Like the aft one, good headroom, quite relaxed, pared back styling, clean and functional, everything you need. Nothing posh particularly about this at all. And if we look down into the shower compartment, you can see just a little angle in the side there as the hole begins to taper. So they're making best use of every inch they can. But that's a really decent size separate shower, quite generous, good footprint. Now given that this heads compartment also serves the owner's cabin, it might seem a bit odd to call it the day heads, particularly as we have an additional heads compartment further aft. But really it's all about application, who you've got on board, whether it's close friends and family, whether you're long-term cruising or whether it's a day gathering of people you don't particularly know that well. It's entirely up to you, but it just has the feel, a more natural feel of a day heads, given its accessibility from the pilot house. Now if we move into the forward cabin, the first thing you'll notice is the light. There's just masses of it from these huge overhead hatches. If we get down to bed level, you'll see that these long hull windows are also a bit of a treat. Loads of light, fantastic views. And the bed is pretty good too. You see it tapers a touch, but only right at the head end, around about your shoulder. So it occupies a really good footprint, and there's a step up to it on either side, which suggests there's storage underneath, and there is exactly that. If I bend down, we've got a little pull-out drawer here, currently filled with pillows, but it's a good size. And we've got storage on both sides too, hanging storage on this side. But we'll go to the port side because Patrick of Sargo Yachts has his suit in here, and I wanted you to see that. Isn't that magnificent? Maybe if you can afford a Sargo 45, you'll choose to dress this way. But it's always good to have lots of hanging storage on a boat that's intended for a bit of long-term cruising, and there's certainly plenty of it down here. Now this is certainly not the perfect boat, and I found a couple of screw heads here exposed. It'd be nice to see those recessed with little timber plugs. I've never been a fan particularly of this elephant skin style wipe clean fabric that tends to be used on very practical offshore pilot house boats. And at the aft end here, behind this dinette, as you can see, lots of people having a little party outside. And even though you can open this aft window, the interaction between internal saloon and external cockpit is not fantastic. But you have to say, in pretty much every other regard, this boat nails the brief. This is a really versatile and impressive piece of equipment. It takes the key elements of Sargo's heritage, of Sargo's reputation, and it revoices them, repackages them on a larger, more capable platform. And that is exactly what a proper flagship is designed to achieve.